Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And today I would like to teach you on one topic, which is appropriate use of English, and the focus is on the stages for English language learners. So ELLS is actually an acronym for English language learners. So whenever you see ELLS, is basically for the English language learners. Okay. Alright, so this is the understanding that we must have when we teach English to young English language learners. Alright, so what should come first? It should be oral language. Oral language must come first for young ELLS. Okay, once they have developed oral language skills in English, they can begin to learn about writing and reading in English. So for them to be able to produce the language, there must be also some listening activities that we can provide for them. So while a teacher's goal is to help a child learn to be literate, that means be able to read, it is important to remember that when teaching children who are English language learners, the acquisition of oral language must precede written language. That means you must teach them how to speak before they're able to write, before you teach them how to write. And children may be exposed to written words and text through reading and telling him or her stories, but should not be expected to begin reading or writing until a foundation of oral language has been developed. Some of the teachers and parents, they are very eager for the children to be able to read. However, this is not necessary because according to their development, the spoken language must be set as a foundation before they can start reading and further then on writing. And we see that while children who learn a new language will do so in a variety of ways and at different speeds. So we have to remember the principle of child development, where children will develop according to the stages. However, their speed or their rate or their pace may be different. Alright, so this is very important for us, and they will learn the language in a variety of ways. Remember that we talk about English language styles and strategies. So these are the variety of ways where children or English language learners employ as they learn the English. And most of the children will pass through a series of stages. So we will talk about the stages later. And these stages describe the process of learning a new language. So we must understand this so that we know when and how to design activities for children to learn English. Okay, we come to the stages of second language learning. Right? So in this case, we are talking about English as a second language. So altogether, there are 9 stages of second language learning. So, and within that 9 stages, they have been grouped in 3 phases. And these 3 phases outline the initial steps to learning a new language for any individual, young or old. So usually, even though there are some adults learn English at a later age, for example, when they are in secondary school, or maybe they are in university and so on, so they will also go through the same stages, and these 9 stages have been grouped into 3 phases, so it's easier for you to remember the 3 phases. These stages provide an example of how children acquire a new language. So this example. However, it is important to keep in mind that different children may enter school at different stages, and that all children may not pass through all stages at the same rate or even in the same sequence. So this is why I think we have to know that children, they have different abilities, they have different styles and strategies, and therefore as teachers we also must have differentiated learning, different levels of teaching and activities that we should be using with children who are learning English as a second language. So regardless of how children progress through these stages, teachers' continued support and encouragement will help him or her with the very difficult task of learning a new language. This is when the scaffolding comes in. The teachers need to give continuous support and encouragement so that they will be motivated to learn English, even though it is difficult for them. So this is the first phase, and we call it observation and imitation. This is also, I've mentioned this before in our previous class, this is called a silent stage, and sometimes may be combined with emotional shock. Children have not been exposed to an environment where English is used, even though this is for some children who have not been listening to any of spoken English words at home. So what happened to the child? The child is taking in the new situation and also listening to the language to begin to make sense of what goes around him and her. And what will they do? They will imitate what other children do in the class. So in a sense that he or she is pretending that he or she understands. So I will share a video and after this class, and you will see that children actually understand that they may not be able to speak yet, but they are still able to imitate, observe, and then learn on how to use. And why they need to pretend that they understand? This is to show that they don't look like they don't understand at all. They will pretend that they understand, even though they are still in the process of learning some of the English words spoken around them. And what happened at this stage is that a very outgoing child may use a lot of body gestures. We talked about in our previous class on the styles, and the personality of any individual. So introvert and extrovert, for example. So outgoing, we can classify that into an extrovert child, who is always outgoing. So this kind of personality may use a lot of body gestures. They move a lot, and they actually grab other kids in order to make him or herself understood. That is how the effort that they want to make sure that they everybody understand them. And this may be misinterpreted as physical aggression by other children or by the teacher, because they don't have the vocabulary, they don't have the language. So that is why they want to make themselves understood. Then therefore it can be misinterpreted by others. And also at this is phase 2. Phase 2, which is called single word and phrase use. So at this stage, children begin to use words or phrases that are important for his or survival in the classroom. These are some of the phrases, for them to be able to survive. Because in the classroom, it's not like when they are at home. There are very few people at home, and people can be more, siblings or parents are more tolerant. However, in a classroom where children are from diverse background, they have to survive. So in order for them to survive, they need to learn some phrases that are important for them. Okay, so some of the phrases that can be used during the survival situation in the classroom are like "stop it." This is in the situation where the people are getting fight with them or things like that, and so they need to know how to defend themselves. And this phrase, for example, like "stop it," this is to show that this child doesn't like to be disturbed by the other friends. And the other phrase is like "I'm next." This is to show the turn taking. So then, in an early childhood classroom, obviously you need to wait for your turn, and this is also very important for the child to express that their turn will come next. So this is also important, and they have to say like "I'm next." And the other and the child begin to use the language but is still not sure of what constitutes a separate word in English. For example, the phrase "I like it," so which she or he hears over and over, and as if it were two words. So I like it is like three different words, but if they have been hearing for the phrase for many times, and they will say that I like it play ball, I like it little trucks, okay, which is in the right form. It should be I like playing ball or I like little trucks. So eventually, as they become master at the right phrases, they can say that I like trucks eventually. Finally they know that it is not necessary in every single phrase like I like it. And phase 3, this is a more advanced stage where this is the initial understanding of grammatical rules. And early on in his or her use of English, the child may leave out plurals or past tense markers. This does not mean that the child doesn't understand the concept of more than one of past events. However, because the complexity of the grammar, they might leave it out, okay, and they might feel using this form is quite comfortably in his or her first language. So sometimes we don't have like in Bahasa, for example, we don't have past event change in the verb. For example, I eat. In English, the past event is I ate, right? And you have plurals where you add s to show there are more than one. So it may not have the same grammatical rules in other language, and usually because of the complexity of the rules, children may resort to the rules in her or his first language. And another rules for the acquisition of a second language is that concentrate on big things first and leave the details for later. What does it mean? It means here that as long as you understand what the child is saying, it is just take it at that stage. You don't correct them if they are wrong. Don't correct them if they make any grammatical mistakes. Don't say that they are wrong when they don't know how to choose the right words to express themselves. So you have to concentrate on the expression of the language first, whether it is what do they want to say, rather than they keep correcting the child's mistakes. So this is very important for them to be motivated to keep using English in their speaking activities. And also in the same phase, which is understanding of grammatical rules, the child's comprehension exceeds his or her ability to produce language. This is always common for us also as a second language learners. When I speak, you understand. However, it is quite difficult for you to produce or to express using English, for example. So yeah, that is the thing that's happening with the child also. And although we often place emphasis, we focus on what the child is producing than what she or he is comprehending. This is where we always tend to correct the mistakes, grammatical mistakes done by the child, okay. So this is not appropriate yet for this stage, so you have to ignore that, so that they will have better ways to express themselves. And the child may use the appropriate content words but not in the appropriate form, because in English, there are some grammatical rules like we have adjective, adverbs, noun, pronoun, so on. So these may not sometimes be in the appropriate form. For example, a child may be observing an experiment with ice in the freezer. So and say water frozen, where in the right form it should be frozen water, but because of the form, which is, you know, the water frozen and frozen water, so frozen is actually an adjective that describe the word, the water. Alright, so but it is still very complex to the child to understand, but they will get it as they go along, and they feel motivated as they listen to more English words being used around them. And a child's language may use grammatical forms that are literal translation from his or her language. This is also very common. For example, a child for whom Bahasa Melayu is the first language, right? Who is used to the fact that his or her language, there is no gender for pronoun. Okay, because in Bahasa we don't have like he or she. He is for the masculine, and she is for the feminine. So it's quite difficult for us. In Bahasa we say dia. Dia here means could be, it can be a boy, it can be a girl. Okay, so for example, in this question or an answer given by the child, so why is my father, I put he here or there. So you see here, the word him has been omitted, has been dismissed by the child, because they don't know him or he, or you know, or she or her, because of that gender. And also at the phase 3, the child tries to make the most of vocabulary that she has learned. This is when they are experimenting with the language. For example, they can say my sleeves are big, so instead of long. See, so this is the sleeves. So here the child is generalizing the meaning of big, so to include anything that goes beyond a particular dimension. For example, so the house is big, the apple is big, the cat is big, so everything is big. Whereby in English, if they have a better vocabulary, then they will know how to describe certain things using the right vocabulary. However, this is what they can make use of, the knowledge that they have. They know the word big, so they will apply the word big in everything that goes beyond the particular dimension. Okay, and there are some tips for the second language learning. Because children can acquire native-like pronunciation in second language, this is very possible, right? So that's why, if you I said before in my previous lecture, that if a child watches many English TV cartoon program, and when they speak English, because they've been listening to that the way the English programs or English cartoons conversations or dialogues, they will also be able to speak just like the native speaker. And it's easy to assume that they know a lot more than language than they actually do. It's basically they are just acquire the native like pronunciation. They may sound like an English person simply because they have been listening to that kind of pronunciation from the TV programs that they watch a lot. And also be sure that the child understands what you read or discuss with him or her, and how to make sure that they understand. You can always check their comprehension, and maybe you can ask them to repeat what you have asked them, or maybe they can retell the story that you told them. So these are among the strategies that you can check children's understanding. And encourage the student to ask for definition of words or concepts and provide a model for this. This is to say that tell your student he or she can say. You have to show to them, provide a model to this. Like if they don't understand, they can say I don't understand whenever something is not clear to them. So children have to know how to say something in certain situation, and they can say that if you model to them how to say this in the right situation. And in this way, he or she will know how to ask for help. So these are the important phrases that you can provide to the children, so that they can always know what to use when you, what language or what phrases to use if they need help. And children will experiment more with a new language with peers than when with adults. This is very true, because when as they play with their peers or their friends, they are more relaxed. They are not being judged by the teachers. They feel that they are not being judged. And also compared when they are with adults or teachers, they might feel scared, they might afraid they might make mistakes or so on. So when they are with the children, they will just speak in English, provided there is like a dominant environment for English. Then they will be using English even though they are not really good at it. Okay, even they are still learning, even though they don't have many vocabulary to express themselves, but they will feel more comfortable using the language with the peers than with the adults. And if possible, as a teachers, observe children interacting with peers. So this is when you can actually know what scaffolding that you can provide to the children. Are they not really sure of how to say it the right way in certain situation? For example, if you observe them and they don't know how to say anything, if the teacher, if the friends are disturbing them, so this child needs to say this in that situation. And also this will give you information about the extent of his or her vocabulary and fluency in an informal setting. And you see that that they need more vocab, for the context they are always in, and how fluent they are in the informal setting. And as for the reading instruction for young English language learners, this is how the appropriate strategies, the use of appropriate use in English. As I said earlier in my lecture, it's important for you to emphasize oral language development before you begin teaching reading, because children cannot be expected to learn to read a language before they have an understanding of that language as it is spoken. So you need to really speak to them for them to be able to understand. Much of our reading skill depends on how we expect a sentence to flow or string of words to make sense. And if we do not have an understanding of the language, we do not have a framework for understanding what we are reading. So that's why we can see some children, they can read, and then when you ask them, what do you understand by this, or you ask questions that are related to their understanding, they may not be able to explain it to you because they don't actually understand what they are reading. Therefore, as language learners, we all need to speak before reading, and this pattern must be followed by new language learners at any age. And that is why you can see some people who are not educated even, they can speak the second language very well compared to their reading or writing. See, if you meet people who may have a lower academic qualification, but they can actually speak better because compared to the reading and writing, because that's how they actually learn English. Another way of improving their reading instruction is to read aloud to children. So read aloud is about when you show books to the children, and make sure that the books that are age and content appropriate. This is another way, an excellent way to familiarize children with a new language. So you read aloud to them so that they can hear the language being spoken, and also they can understand just by looking at the pictures that are shown on the pages of the book. And secondly, it is impossible to read and comprehend what you read unless you already know most of the vocab included in the reading. Therefore, whenever you use read aloud with the children, make sure you point to some of the important pictures in the book on the pages, so that they know what is the meaning of certain pictures and they know what are the words in English. And once they know, they will understand and they will appreciate the story better. And as I said before, that oral language precedes written and reading. This is why it is very important for us to encourage informal interaction in English. This is the main reason why children learn languages best in situations where the focus is on meaning rather than language. This is when I say focus on the big thing first. what are they trying to express, okay, rather than the language form, the grammatical aspect, you know. So that is less important because they need to have that confidence of using English or second language. And as we said before, in terms of the development of a second language, we believe that the younger the learners, the more they will benefit from the experience of hearing the language, hearing the target language or English in appropriate situations. So if they listen to the words more and more when they were younger, it is better for them when they grow up, because they've been stored some of the words in their memory. Children need opportunities for appropriate practice so that they are able to use the language in real situation. So this is when you must understand as teachers that the earlier children are introduced to realistic practice, the better. That means they need opportunities. The teacher must provide the opportunities for them to use the language. How? That means teachers must devise or design activities where children must be able to use the language. They are not only just reading or only writing, but they need to be able to listen and speak using the language. So this is the teacher's role in terms of designing the activities, or maybe when you're having informal conversation with them, you need to interact more with the children using English. Meaning is communicated more directly in formal setting. This is because if it's informal, then there are many more objects that are present in the surrounding. That means if you are sitting in the classroom with the children, not really teaching, but you just interacting and having like a very casual conversations, children feel more relaxed, and then they can they can ask you anything that are not related to the learning activities. They can ask you anything, and that is when you can actually use some of the opportunities to introduce them to more vocabulary in context. And as we all know, children love interacting with others, and children naturally seek human interaction. This is when you must show to the children that English is a means of communication in the same way of mother tongue. Alright, so you must make them understand. Sometimes when you try to speak English, they will say, what is the teacher trying to say? So they must understand that when you speak English, it is also just as like you using your mother tongue or your native language, right? So you must show that it is a means of communication, exactly like they are using Bahasa or Chinese or Tamil for that purpose. I think I've covered the appropriate use of English in early childhood education settings, and I will share the video with you, and I hope you can watch the video and understand the stages better. With that, I thank you. If there are any questions, please ask me in my forum. Thank you very much.